and gents. This is Eleanora Grace for Grace Through Journey, and we have another amazing guest. But before I say that, um, before I introduce him to you, he's all the way from Australia, and we met online through a book series project with Sir Marco Robinson, and it's about the Start Over Movement project. And I read part of his story, and it makes you think about his story. That made me also think, because when I read the title, God is Not My Friend, which you guys see in the cover of our podcast here, the title is God is Not My Friend. And to me, that hit home. And when it hit home, it reveals a lot of behind the scenes of what is truth to you and what is truth to others, and which one you are going to embody and which one you are going to let go. Right? So it's really, really deep. So I would love for you guys who are listening here to have an open heart, an open mind to learn something from this deep core stories that reveals about someone who went through tough challenges in life and turn it around, and we can learn something from his wisdoms. And please welcome Johnny Comerford from Australia. Welcome, Johnny.
Thank you, Eleanora. How are you?
Good. um Thank you for making the time being here and sharing that you will be sharing the story with your story with us.
No, thank you for having me. I'm very grateful.
You're welcome. So I'm gonna read a little bit of bio about him, about Johnny. So it starts like this. Of course, he's in Australia, in Sydney. If you guys are in Sydney, please try to say hi to him if you meet him there. And his journey through life has been marked by resilience and transformation. After enduring sexual abuse within the Catholic education system as a child and surviving a suicide attempt, and he found a new path to healing and self-discovery through writing, and he you sought help through a therapeutic psychiatrist, right? And from there you wrote a book, and you found healing to writing a book. And to me, I resonate with that, because healing is really a wonderful gift you give to yourself and to other people. So writing your book, and you can find this on Amazon as well. His book is called Tarzan Loves Jane, and we're gonna reveal more about that as we interview him in this course. So Johnny, would you please tell us a little bit of background about yourself, how you started writing this book, what's behind writing this book, first of all, like what was going on in your the first day, the first moment, you know?
Yep. So I think for me, I was going through, as you said, I endured some, sexual assault through the Catholic Education Department at age
Mhm.
11. So I was aged 11.
Wow.
Um, my family had a religious background. Two of my aunties, were nuns. My brothers were altar boys. The church was a big thing in our family. Both my um, my grandparents were all religious.
Yeah.
And then, I'd never dealt with what happened to me at that age. I kept that to myself. And then at age 51, I just had a pretty much an emotional and mental breakdown, which is common for people who don't deal with trauma. Usually
Yeah.
between the ages of 45 between 55 is when people reflect on what happened to them as a child and then go and deal with that. And I was really fortunate to find a psychologist, a psychiatrist who used narrative therapy. So
Wow.
narrative therapy is writing. So you change the story.
The
So instead of
story.
being
Yeah.
assaulted as a child, I wrote different stories about how I
Yeah.
changed the ending to that. And part of that process I actually enjoyed the writing process and got
Yeah.
feedback from my partner and
Yeah.
my psychiatrist about the writing, and found a writing course, and then continued on, and that's where the book Tarzan and Jane came from.
All right, that's amazing. So let's go back because this is the result of what had happened to you, right? Like you wrote
Yeah.
this book because of the story that you went through. So let's go back in time, if you're okay to share with us about your
Yes.
childhood journey. Like, how do you like share your stories to people, your real stories to people about your childhood journey? Like, how do you explain that to them, what about the sexual abuse that you went through the Catholic system? Like, could
Yeah.
you help us understand that, how you process that as a child?
Yep. So at aged 11, I was tasked with cleaning up after a midweek church.
Okay.
I went to a Catholic school where we had brothers that were teachers, and I was caught in there by a brother who then basically assaulted me and raped me inside that church. And basically, from the ages of 11 to 18, it was extremely difficult. I didn't feel like I could tell anyone what happened to me. And when you go back in time, like that was during the 70s, and it's probably hard for people to explain to people, like the 70s weren't like it is now, where,
Yeah.
there's a lot of support, for victims, and, you know, um, even mental health. There was no
Yeah.
talk around people's mental health back then.
Yeah.
Especially as a young boy going into a man, it was like
Yeah.
you had to be tough, act like a man, so that was the sort of
Wow.
era that I sort of grew
Yeah.
up in through the 70s. So it was extremely difficult. I became
Yeah.
withdrawn. I had a pretty good sporting career at an early age, which, I stopped all that. So ages from 11 to 17 and a half, 18 were extremely difficult for me. Then at the age of 18, I I count it as a blessing. I was on a train to go and commit suicide. Um,
Mm.
there's a place in Sydney called the Gap, and I was on my way there to basically jump off a cliff and kill myself. I just couldn't handle it anymore.
Wow.
And then met someone I went to school with, and she was going to army recruiting and asked me to go with her.
Yeah.
And it was a real sliding doors moment where I went with her, and then I ended up joining the military.
Wow.
And she ended up becoming a model and didn't join the military. But I can put my hand on my heart and say that joining the military saved my life. It just gave me a sense of purpose. I had controlled aggression. I could let all this aggression out and anger out that I could never have
Mm-hmm.
before. I was surrounded by young men my own age. There's a lot of camaraderie. You get that
Wow.
esprit de corps from being in a unit. But that part of my life, really saved me. I have no doubt in my mind if where my life was heading.
Yeah.
So I always feel blessed when I think about that time in my life.
Well, it's really tough to go through as a young man or an 11-year-old going through those process that you were abused, and then probably at that age you were confused about how to even identify the process and identify yourself, who are you. And then you probably hearing like lots of advice here from as you growing up, advice here, advice there, but it all boils down to your own decision as a young man, how you're gonna navigate your life. And through military, I know there's a lot of work discipline ethics there that teaches men how to navigate life through pain. And tell us the process about you know like like how did you start learning to accept what had happened to you? Have you forgiven that part? Have you really forgiven that part, the pain
That's
that you
that's a
went
that's a
through?
really good question, and I think writing the book, I actually there was part of me that I couldn't understand, or I couldn't really get out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I went through a process, and something happened to me in my life where I realized if I wasn't assaulted at the age of 11, I
Yeah.
wouldn't have got through this time in my life. So it was like, and I'm big on your life, and things happen in your life for
Yeah.
reasons. But I realized, yeah, if I wasn't assaulted at that early age, I wouldn't have got through this time period in my life. So at a state, then I looked at that and at that time and said, well, I'm actually grateful that that happened to me. And I
Wow.
forgave the person that did it. And I forgave the Catholic Church. Um, and it was a real breakthrough moment for me. And even saying it out loud now, it's
Yeah.
still like I still shake my head, saying it out loud. And I remember writing it, and I remember saying it to my partner Amber. Wow, when I think about that now, and that time actually saved my life and my future self,
Yeah.
which is just incredible when you think about it like that.
Well, it I'm really touched by your story, like really deeply touched by your story, emotionally, energetically, and spiritually as well, because I grew up in a religious background as well, and I went to convent school. I've seen a lot of things. And as a man, what do you say to other men out there how to actually connect from their mind to their heart space? In, for example, you forgave that part of you that happened to you. What would you say to those men out there that who went through abuse? Because men can be abused as well, right? It's not just women. They can be on the receiving end of the stick. and and for you as a man, like, what wisdom of advice would you give those men who can't speak their voice? What would you give them, like
Yeah,
a piece of a wisdom from what you went through?
yeah. And I think your point there too is men have been assaulted, as boys. The
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I found when I first started talking about my story is the amount of men that have connected with me around this, um,
Mm-hmm.
which, it sort of helps. I think the more men understand that they're not the only men and boys that, this happened
Yeah.
to. When I first initially did an article of what happened to me at my school, another 100 boys, well, they were boys then, that they're men now, came forward, like 100.
I bet.
Um, and
Wow.
then to answer your question, the forgiveness, the hate that you hold in, and the anger, the
Mm,
frustration, all the emotions that you hold, that's what is making you unwell.
that's so
That's
true.
what's
Yeah.
holding you down. It becomes like an anchor inside you.
Yeah.
And you need to be able to find someone that you can talk to. I
Mm-hmm.
was and I think I've mentioned this before, when we were talking to Marco around this. Like, finding a therapist is like finding a good partner. The first person
Oh,
you
love
meet,
that.
yeah, the first person you meet mightn't be the right person for you.
Yeah.
I was extremely lucky. The first person I met was the right person for me, and she
Wow.
was able to take me from having no plan to a certain
Mm,
point in my
yeah.
life. And then I met some ones that didn't help me, but the last person that I met um, introduced me to narrative therapy,
Okay.
which gave me that release to say that if I don't let go of this, this is going to affect my life forever. And it had already affected 40 years of my life. Like,
40
I went through this,
years.
yeah, alone for 40
Wow.
years. And as soon as I told someone, I remember the very first time that I told someone, I was 51 when I told a doctor what had happened to me. And the release that I got from that was just this outpouring that I just couldn't stop, I couldn't control.
Wow.
To the 10th time I told someone, I felt sad about it, but I wasn't crying. I got a little bit better, and now 7 years later, I can have conversations like this and understand the growth that where I've come from in that time. But yeah, you've got to, the key is taking the initial step and telling someone you love what had happened to you and how you're feeling. Because, you and I both know if you tell someone who love how you're feeling, they will help you because they
Yeah,
love you, right? They want you to be better.
yeah, yeah. That's so true. Like you really have that. The right one will not run away from your story. They will
Yeah,
learn, because we do meet people who run away from your deep core stories and they can't handle it themselves. And here you are, you found someone, and that's part of the reason also why the title is Tarzan Loves Jane, right?
yeah,
And yeah, so from there, did you also, because I remember you mentioned about humor in your story that also helped you. So how can you help other people here who are in their healing journey? Sometimes you can be so serious in your healing journey, you forget to laugh, you forget joy, how to have joy and fun in life while you're going through grieving stages. So how does that look like when you went through, like, how did you add joy in your life?
yeah. And I think the joy is for me the recovery of coming out of that darkness.
Mm.
And the story Tarzan Loves Jane, is about my story, but I've turned it into this dark romantic comedy because I wanted to
Mm.
show that, and it sounds so funny when I say it out loud, and it still makes me laugh. But it's just the power of forgiveness and healing is love. We
Yes.
it's just, and I found someone who, for the first time in my life, I was extremely honest with someone. When I met them, I told them exactly what had happened to me, and I've just realised that this person, for the first time in my life, actually loved me for
Mm.
all this stuff that I was carrying, and she wanted me to be better, and because of that, I wanted to be better. But it's a sad story, right? And I didn't want to write a sad story
A
with it.
sad story.
I wanted to write a love story.
Yeah.
So I wanted the characters. I wanted this to be a love story. Um, but naturally, I'm a bit of a smart ass, we say in Australia, and I wanted to make it funny. So because it's got such a dark story, I wanted to make light of different the character, about how the
Yeah.
character was, because he's got voices. He internalizes everything. He's a bit.
Mm.
He says
Interesting.
yeah, he just says what he's thinking. He doesn't hold anything back. And
Wow.
some things have happened in his life, which, because of the way he interacts with people, it just makes it funny. So and the feedback is that when from the book is, you know, the book made me cry, but it made me laugh as well. And I think that's
Mm.
something that, and when people say that to me, that was the aim of the book. I wanted people to say, bad things can happen to you, but it doesn't make you a bad person. And if you find the right person to help you, you can get out of anything and, really make a difference to other people's lives, which I wanted to do as well.
That's amazing. Like you turn your loss into love and grief into grace and your wounds into wisdom. And here you are setting a great example to the world and voicing out your truth and in so many many ways. And not only to the adult people but also to the youth, right? Like, because this also speaks volume to the young man out there, and it's pretty amazing. And when it comes to finding y- like finding love again, like your partner, and did that also like affect while you were in the process of your journey? Did it affect your life too, your love life? Like you said, you were questioning whether this person is the one who's gonna accept your life story.
Yeah, and the problem that people who've been through trauma, as you know, Eleanora, is we we self sabotage. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was questioning if Amber was here for the right reasons, and is Amber really the one? And there's a couple of sentences in my book where there's a conversation with my sister, and it's a true story, and she said to me, are you sure you're ready for this? Because you self sabotage everything. And
Mm-hmm.
it was like, no, I don't. And then I went through the journey, and in the book, and it's part of the true story, and I did in real life. Like I did try and self-sabotage that.
Yeah.
I didn't think I was worthy of Amber's love.
Mm.
And there was a time that we had to get through, which is like for me was the last push. I knew that if I didn't sort this out right now, that not only would I lose Amber, but I would lose my life, because if I couldn't fix this and make this relationship work and be strong, because I've been married 3 times.
Oh
So,
wow. Yeah.
so there's a lot of self-doubt in my
Yeah.
relationships, because I wasn't in the relationships for the right reasons,
Mm.
because of the self-sabotage and because of what was going on with my mental and emotional state. But I
Yeah.
knew that this was right. So it made me work hard, um,
Wow.
to prove to Amber that, I'm all in. And that's one of the reasons that I wrote the book. And, you know,
Mm-hmm.
something will happen now, if I'm not being the best partner, I turn around to Amber and go, well, at least I wrote a book for you.
Oh, I love it. That
Yeah.
is like wow, like a wonderful true love gift. Like like it's just I'm speechless on how you write that book. You're not only thinking about yourself, you're also thinking about your loved one, and you're including them, you're engaging them into your story. It's really a wonderful gift. So what would okay? Let me ask you a question. Who is God to you now? Since the title is God is not my friend. So where did that come from? Like now, who is God to you? Because that was your definition before, but now what is your definition of who is God to you now?
That's a very good question. And I'd thought about this a lot just for the project that we're both working on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I made myself question my relationship with God now. So
Mm-hmm.
the chapter "God is not my friend" is because I went through a lot of pain. I went through a lot where I blamed God. How could God be my
My
friend?
friend, yeah.
He put me through this journey,
Yeah.
of what I had to achieve in my life. And then, as we spoke about before, something happened where,
Mm-hmm.
I realized that if I didn't go through this horrible part of my life, I wouldn't have been in a position to save my life. So
Exactly.
it made me rethink my whole relationship with God. Um, and what I say to people now is we're still not best friends, um, but we talk. We're
Wow.
working on it.
We're working on it. It's
We're
a
working on
process.
it.
It's a journey, isn't it? Right?
Yeah, but I think the biggest thing, and the biggest thing to take away from that question is I don't blame God. Um,
Mm.
where before, I did. I've had a resent towards God and the church, and everything to do with being a Catholic. Where
Yeah.
now, I'm I'm okay.
Yeah.
I still obviously get triggered going into
Yeah.
churches and all that sort of stuff, but I've done a lot of things, just even around the house. When you walk out of our door, we've got a number of different, crucifixes from around the world. So, and that's just making sure that I don't
Yeah.
get triggered on things. But it's.
Mm. Yeah.
I think it's more of a spiritual side now.
Yeah.
I understand, and as we get older, we understand our lives a bit better. So, yeah, I think my relationship is, we talk, we're working on it, but yeah, we've got a better relationship now than we did for a long time.
I love that answer. We're working on it. I'm gonna steal that from you. I think I like that.
You can do whatever you
I
like.
I really think that answer. Like yeah, I will remember that for the rest of my life. Like what's your relationship with God? Awesome. So when it comes to relationship with you, um, now we already discussed the relationship with your partner, relationship with God, relationship with the church, you know, and you know, and what is your relationship with yourself? Like, are you healed?
Well, that's a good question. It's, good question. Yeah, I think right now I'm. probably the best that I've ever been in my life.
Mm.
Um, and we were talking about this last night because we were talking about talking to you today. And I think one of the things I said to Amber last night was, you know, if something happened to me in my life now, I'm at the stage where I already understand that my next life or my next journey is going to be something that it's going to be big for me because I feel like that I've learnt my life lesson. I think that was getting through this after such a
Mm.
long period of time, and now, I have men reaching out to me, um,
Wonderful.
asking me about my journey, and who've been through something similar, um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that has turned out something was such a horrible thing in my life for such a long time has now given me the power to help other people get through their journeys, and I'm really excited to do that. Recently there was an article in a local magazine in the area that I live, and I've had people reach out to me for their partners, and would I be willing to talk to people?
Yeah.
And that to me is the blessing. So I feel like that, I had to go through something to maybe help someone to get through that journey and get them to where I am now,
Yeah.
because I can see the path in it, and it's hard to sit here and say, look, I feel like where I am in my life is now is great. Where people who see that think, oh, that's great, but they don't see how bad I was. Like
Yeah.
I've tried to
That's
take
true.
my life numerous times,
Yeah.
and every single time that I went to do that, a sliding doors moment has stopped me from doing that and has taken me somewhere else.
Yeah.
I've been so deep and dark in life,
Yeah.
where I just couldn't imagine sitting here talking to you right now, feeling great about my life.
Mm-hmm.
Even 6 years ago. So I think that's the relationship with myself is I finally understand that I had to get through what I needed to get through to allow me to have the ability just not to be a better person for myself, but to be a
Yeah.
better person for my partner, Amber, to be a better father for my children, be a better brother for my family,
That's
and be a
right.
better person in my community to help my community if they need it. And
That's
I'm really excited for that part. Like I'm really excited for that.
well. I'm proud of you, Johnny. Sometimes we do get triggered, like you said. We still get triggered. We're human. At the same time, when it comes to the relationship with the child in you, have you also made peace with that, the child in you? Do you think that child in you has been healed? Has he been healed as well?
Yes. I
Mm.
and it's funny. One of the things that I tried to do with a psychiatrist that I saw was, um, she made me pick 5 things that would make the child, say the 11-year-old, happy.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it be, a toy from back in that period, or just something. And I actually went back, um, and did that. Like there was like an Evil Knievel thing, or there was a
Yeah.
Matchbox car, or there was something that from my childhood that I brought into my life, and it made me feel happy. There was a Star Wars figurine, some Darth Vader stuff, just things that were reminded me of good things in my childhood. So yeah, about 5 years ago, I went through that process to make sure that he was okay, and that's one of
Mm-hmm.
the things that I mentioned. Someone asked me that question: "What would you say to the 11-year-old boy
Yeah.
um, now?" And I would say to him, "Just hang on, just hang in there. We'll get through it. Like you'll get through it."
Yeah.
Yeah, because I just couldn't. I'm just different times in my life, and up until 6 years ago, I just didn't think I'd ever get through it. And I wondered if this was going to be my life. Like I'd
Mm-hmm.
already been through 40 years. Would I have to go through 60 years, or 70 years feeling like this? But, I'm just, there was a line drawn in the sand, and I keep going back to, Amber, and, meeting her, and what she's done for me, because, she'd made me see that I could get through it. It just took, it took being honest to someone, to be honest to your core, exposing the the person inside you to someone
Yeah.
unconditionally. This is who I am. This is who I really am. There's no
Mm,
filter. This is who I am, and have someone accepting you for that and loving you for that. It's been amazing for me, and I feel blessed that I met her.
yeah. Since somebody already asked you that question, so I'm gonna ask you a reverse question. What would the child in you say to the person you are right now?
He'd give me a hug. I think,
I love that.
yeah, he would. Yeah, I think he'd say the same thing. We got through it. Like,
You got through it.
yeah, we got through it. Like, I think we'd high five each other. I
Oh,
think
I
we,
love that.
yeah, I
You
think
are
we'd high five
leveling.
each other now.
Yeah, it's like you leveling in his love language as a child, and he's thanking you. That's how I picture it too. Like he's thanking you, thank you for telling the story,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah, and that was telling that story was a massive step, but I wasn't ready for it either. Like, I'd only you know, just got out of this mental, emotional breakdown, and I thought, right, well, the key to this is to get it out, do that story. But I wasn't ready.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't really dealt with my own stuff, and I sort of unwillingly became a bit of a poster boy here in Sydney, and especially for the school that I went to. So I had a lot of people reach out to me from that school and tell me what happened to them, and I was taking on what happened to them as well as what I had
Mm,
to deal with. Where I actually went back and just said, "Look, I can't do this. I'm sorry,
yeah.
but I can't do this." Where now, after really fixing myself, finding, my why and what I wanted to achieve, the forgiveness part, it's been massive. And once you forgive, it gives you the opportunity to move forward. Where now I am ready. I want to be that person to be there for other people. So,
Wonderful, because you also reaching out to the youth. Like that reminds me, because when my son died of suicide, I was also asked to speak in, like a little bit about it in the school, because it brings awareness of, the suicide awareness, because you went through that too and when you were younger. And it's amazing how you decided to choose healing over suffering. And this is the result that, that you are right, that you wrote a book and you're speaking in, in different platforms. And right now you're going to be speaking in a bigger platform with Sir Marco Robinson about your story as well, which is really powerful story. And if you ladies and gents that are listening here in this podcast at Grace Through Journey, I would love for you guys to go online and search Johnny book, Tarzan Loves Jane. And Johnny, could you tell the audience here where would they find your book?
yep. So the book's on Amazon. It's on Kindle. So if you type in Tarzan Loves Jane, JJ Comerford, the book will come up. And if you Google that, it'll come up and show you. It's got a bright pink cover with Tarzan Loves Jane on it. You can't miss it.
Do you have it right there right now? And whether you can show it to
I
them as well?
do.
Yeah, we can wait for that. Yeah, that would be great. Because
Oh, I must have
yeah,
moved it.
or you can show it a screen. Oh, I can also show them the link and post it on this description here. And with this story, it's not just about, the laughter and the joy, but it's also about the message of his book. So really the message of this book in general?
Yep. The message of Tarzan Loves Jane is simply all you need is love. If you meet the
Mm,
right person, you work on yourself, you accept what's going on in your life, you let go, you forgive, you can have your life back, and you'd be surprised. You can be surprised how quickly you'll start to feel better. That's one of the things that amazed me. Every day was a step, and every day you got a little bit better. I mean, I got better. Um, but it was the final step for me was accepting that I needed to do the work. I thought that just saying out loud that I was raped, or I have mental health problems, I thought just saying that out loud would instantly cure me, and then I'd be okay. But it's just not. You have to put the effort in. You have to do the work, and I did. I did the work, and to the point where I do feel like there's something going on with me. I go back. I've still got the stories that I wrote as part of my therapy. I read back through those stories, and that
Mm.
builds me back up and gets me back on the line. I'm very honest with Amber about how I feel about things. We're extremely lucky. We live 1 block away from the beach. I try and get into the ocean every day, and
Wow,
it's just the little things. I take time for myself,
that's good.
and we take time for each other. So
Yeah,
you've
beautiful.
really got to take time for yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
excellent. Like, wow, what else can I say, right? Like, what would be your last word for the rest of us who are listening here? What's your final word as your truth?
Mm, my truth.
Maybe one word or 2 words or 3 words. What is your truth?
Be honest to yourself.
Nice.
The only person who really knows you is you.
I love that. Mm.
And we know when we're not telling the truth. We know when we're putting things off. We know it's hard to have the right conversation all the time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I just find instead of holding on to something, if something happens, instead of bottling it up and letting that build inside me, as soon as something happens now, I say something, and then that sort of just makes you more relaxed. But I try and be a better person every day. I just try to be a better person. And if we all do try and be a little bit better, we will be, and everyone will be a little bit better for it.
Amazing. So, what's next for you now, Johnny?
Well, very exciting to work with you and the other great writers with their stories with Sir Marco,
Yeah.
with the Start Over series. I'm sure you agree, Eleanora, that process has been absolutely amazing listening to people's stories and
Mm-hmm.
just the personal growth that I've got out listening to stories, and to think, so Marco's allowing all of us to tell our stories, so other people who might have gone through something similar between like you and I have, is our opportunity for other people to reach out and read our stories, and maybe that might make them try and get some help.
Perfect. And speaking of that, that would be the Start Over project that we are both working on, and along with other, like there are about 140 authors here, and it's a world book tour. And if you guys want to learn more about that or know more about that, join the wait list and DM me or Johnny, and we will inform you more about it. So thanks, Johnny, for this wonderful podcast. I
No,
learned a
thank
lot from
you.
you, and
No.
I will remember that answer about we're working on it, the relationship with God.
No, thank you for having me. I love your podcast. It's an honor to be on it. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, and thanks everyone for being here and your wonderful